I don't think that the public realize just how much informants are actually a part of routine police work. There is some evidence that most crimes of a serious nature are actually solved because of the deployment of an informant of some kind. But beyond the psychology of the informant, there's the psychology of the whistleblower, someone who reveals something that's going on within an institution which we would never have found out if someone hadn't blown the whistle. And the psychology of these two groups of people are often very similar. And there's also the psychology of the person who's in the news at the moment when leaks occur of an intelligence agency which keeps secrets from the world, but then a worldwide leak occurs and it's very embarrassing for the country involved. And that kind of leak has been happening with increasing frequency over the last few years, which demonstrates that no matter how secure your technology, it's the human factor which often is difficult to protect against. There are two basic kinds of informant. There's the insider and the outsider. The insider is someone who is part of the criminal world, part of the criminal fraternity, and may even take part in crimes on practically a daily basis. For various reasons, they decide to become an informant and start informing to the police about behavior, criminal activity they are seeing themselves. So that's a person who's breaking ranks from the community or the family, as it were, that they are part of. And obviously it takes a very special kind of person, perhaps, to do that. The outsider is someone who infiltrates a criminal gang or a terrorist organization. And that infiltration may be something that has been planned by the police or the authorities. So the outsider has a very different psychology, but often that is the psychology of the double agent, the person who's pretending to be someone or something that they are not. There's a lot of very interesting recent evidence that that strain of the double identity often comes back to haunt the person who carries off the double identity task very well indeed. They often, it appears later on, get confused as to what is their original or real self. The informer against Thomas Cashman, who was crucial in breaking this case and who was described by the press as a star witness, has obviously had to remain anonymous because what she has done, and she herself said this in court, is ruined her life. She's put her life in danger. So what's the psychology behind someone who makes this radical decision to turn against someone? And what's very interesting about this situation is this was the home, apparently, the criminal ran to immediately after shooting the child. This tells us that this criminal trusted this person. It is the turning of trust, the betrayal, which is at the heart of the psychology of the informant. If the criminal had any idea that this was possible, they wouldn't have trusted this person. It was the trust that has become betrayed that allowed the police to catch this criminal. The psychology of the informant is crucial to this case. Given that this informant has openly declared that her decision to inform on this criminal has ruined her life forever, the psychology of why someone would do that becomes of special interest, particularly given we know that a lot of crimes go unsolved because there is no informant, and the police solve many crimes because they rely on the use of informants. A clue as to the psychology of this particular person is revealed by their behavior in the courtroom. The press have widely reported on the fact that this witness was a very feisty character, often abrasive in her response to the defense barrister, who was and is a very skilled barrister and themselves therefore used to aggressive questioning and intimidating the witness. But this witness was clearly not intimidated and fought back. Does this give us a clue as to her psychology? Is this the kind of person who doesn't take nonsense? She's not pushed around by a criminal or a gangster. One particular psychological reason why people turn informant is they have a grievance. They are annoyed or upset by something the criminal has done, and they are seeking revenge. And they seize the opportunity provided by incidents like this to right the wrong they have experienced. This may have been the psychology in this particular situation. Another possibility is, given this criminal ran to this woman's home immediately after committing the crime, that in itself may have really annoyed her. Because if she didn't turn informant, she was now actually, in a sense, involved in the crime, almost a collaborator. Maybe she was upset at the presumption of this man in assuming she would fall into line and be obedient. It is quite interesting that in the witness stand, she was quite aggressively antagonistic about the criminal that she was now betraying and turning informant, and made some rather outrageous, some people would say, statements about his sexual performance in bed. So there was a lot of emotion, a lot of grievance, it would appear, involved in this woman's testimony. Was that part of the psychology of why she turned on this man and therefore unlocked this case for the police? The public are very attracted to the idea of the kind of angel motivation that someone decides to turn informant. And you can see this in some Hollywood films because they are of upright moral character, and there's something about the angelic nature of the informant that's being appealed to. I'm afraid to tell you the research evidence on informants suggests this is an extremely unusual reason for people to turn informants. Most informants are not betraying and providing information for any particularly high moral reason. You can see one of the reasons for that is they're often part of the criminal underworld, hence they are witness, in some sense, to the crime. Generally speaking, the reasons why people turn informant is self-interest. The idea that they're going to get paid by the police, although that does happen, is not actually that frequent the reason. Instead, the police offer something. They may offer to go lightly in terms of their own criminal prosecution of that informant. The police may have something on the informant which they are using to put pressure on the informant to break ranks. The informant often has an incentive in the police offer to turn a blind eye to the informant's criminal activities, or turn a blind eye to some past indiscretion where the police have something on the informant. The research evidence on people who turn double agent and become spies for their own country is heavily loaded towards the idea that it isn't a moral choice, an ideological choice. Instead, it's a self-interested choice where grievance, revenge, being paid, or being blackmailed because the police have something on you is the main reason, or are the main reasons, why people turn informant. For various reasons, there is a very strong code whereby on the street, and particularly amongst criminals, there's a huge antagonism towards what's referred to as informants or snitches. There is a catchphrase in the criminal world which is snitches end up in ditches. Not only is there a strong code, a strong opprobrium against snitches or informants, but some of the most extreme violence is meted out to anyone who's discovered to be an informant within the criminal underworld. And there is a reason for that, which is to strongly discourage people from turning informant or snitches, so that we can see within the world which is going to be betrayed why there's a very strong cultural self-interested reason for everyone to be very against the idea of snitching. There's a sense in which it protects that community that is seeking not to be informed on and therefore undone through an informant to the police. What is more interesting is why the public take a rather interesting and sometimes antagonistic view towards informants and snitches. They are not people that are welcomed into the bosom of the public. There is a strong sense in which we're all a bit suspicious of someone who betrays someone else, even if that betrayal appears to have a strong moral reason behind it. There is a sense in which, generally speaking, all of us want to trust people around us. The reality is we're not always honest all of the time, and a lot of trust is based on precisely this point. We've done something a bit dodgy, and we need our people closest to us, our partners, our husbands, our wives, our spouses, our children, who've witnessed the dodgy thing we've done, to stick by us and stand by us. There actually is a very strong sense in which the test of intimacy between people, in a sense of emotional intimacy, is the test of who wouldn't betray us if they see us doing something wrong.